What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going game by game, talking about the running backs I'd be starting and sitting this week. And we'll get into that in a second. But first, of course, have to start things off as usual. The stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which receiver currently leads the league in average separation. The answer is Rondale Moore. They really need to be getting him more snaps. Mitch Zabka was the first to get that right on YouTube, and no one currently has that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Just 2 running backs rank inside the top 10 or in the top 10, counting 1 through 10, so 10 counts, in full PPR scoring despite single-digit receptions. Nick Chubb is one of them. Who is the other? All right, let's talk about some running backs. And first up, we're going to have the Giants at Saints game. This game opened with a 43.5 point total, then bet down to 41.5. So I believe it's tied as the lowest scoring game of the week. And the Saints are 7.5 point home favorites, which means the Giants are only projected to score 16 points. So not a good game environment, but let's be honest, with the 2 running backs in this game, you're always starting Saquon Barkley and you're always starting Alvin Kamara. Just maybe a little bit of a lower ceiling given that not that many touchdowns are expected to happen. Although with Kamara, he could have, all of the touchdowns for the Saints. Again, you're starting both these guys. Next up, we've got Chiefs at Eagles. This game has a 54.5 point total, so one of the higher total games of the week. Makes sense, the Chiefs game. The Chiefs are 7-point road favorites. For the Chiefs, they have the second highest implied total of the slate, so they should score a good amount of touchdowns. That's really good for running backs. But I can only list Clyde as a running back 2 for the reasons that I've gone over later last week and earlier this week. We can't really know if they're going to give him perhaps a few less carries, a few, let's say less targets, but he only has 5 targets on the season, but maybe a little bit less work because of, losing them the game in the fumble 2 weeks ago, losing another fumble this last week. He's still going to have a relatively small role in the red zone. He's, again, like I said, he only has 5 receptions through 3 games, so not a high receiving ceiling. So there are reasons to not be in love with Clyde. But again, if we're looking at it, second highest implied total in the slate, favored in the game, it's a good spot for running backs. And so I think you're still playing Clyde as a running back 2. This Eagles team also was just ripped apart, right, by Dallas. And so you got to think that Kansas City can find success on the ground as well. For the Eagles, Miles Sanders had only 2 carries last week, and they're in a projected negative game script again. So you can point to the 2 carries being like, oh, well, Dallas got way up on them. Well, that's kind of what we're expecting from Kansas City as well. So is that possible to happen again? Definitely. Despite this, I still view Sanders as a quality running back too. You're not going to love putting him in at that spot because while he's been really, really good on the touches he's gotten this season, he hasn't, had a very high ceiling for those touches. Is he going to get enough volume on the ground? I don't think anyone can really know that. As long as this game is not a complete blowout like the Dallas game was, I do think he'll get there because he contributes on the ground. He still has touchdown upside because he's who they would use in the red zone. He's got receiving upside. He's good in the receiving game. So I think because he can contribute in all these areas, unless the game is a blowout, I think he's going to be worth starting as running back 2. But they have lost some key offensive linemen. And there's for sure a chance they get smoked in this game. So if you do happen to have 2 top 15 running backs and you want to bench Sanders, you've got a really solid running back core, I'd be fine doing that. But I'd also be surprised if you have 2 top 15 running backs and Miles Sanders. That's a pretty good core that a lot of people probably don't have. But under that scenario, yeah, I'd be fine benching him. Texans at Bills up next. We've got probably, I'd say one of, if not the highest spreads of any game you're going to see this season. Pretty average total, 47 points, but the Bills are favored by 16.5 points. You're just not going to see that many games where one team is favored by nearly 2 touchdowns and a field goal. That's just incredible. And I think at one point it was at 17 points. So again, one of the largest spreads we should see this season. For the Texans, no, we're just going to continue fading them. For the Bills, I discussed earlier this week how we saw a shift in the backfield in week 3. Zach Moss didn't just get blowout run. He was used as a red zone back, but then also between the 20s. And this, again, wasn't just when the game was a blowout. He was used early on. I believe he scored the touchdown in the second quarter. So we should expect them to like roughly split the touches, but for Moss to have slightly more value because he's getting those red zone opportunities. So if their total touches are very similar, but Moss gets more work when they're close to the end zone, obviously Moss is going to have a little bit more value. Given the matchup, given the massive spread, this is all a good thing for running backs. I would treat Moss as like a low-end running back to flex play, and then Singletary a little bit lower than that, maybe a more low-end flex play in that running back like 30 to 35 range, since his touchdown chances are a tad bit lower. Panthers at Cowboys. I think this will be an exciting game to watch. Total is 50.5 points, maybe a little bit higher than I was thinking because both teams do have quality defenses, but both teams have quality offenses as well, so we could still see a lot of points scored. The Cowboys are 4-point home favorites. I believe they opened a little bit higher than that, so been bet down a little bit. For the Panthers, McCaffrey didn't go on IR, which is a very, very good sign, but I don't think he's playing this week. I don't think you should expect him to. So Chuba Hubbard is going to be taking his place, and while Chuba is not going to be featured, like he's still going to have a very large role. He's definitely going to play ahead of Royce Freeman. So given the high total and his touch expectation, I think you're absolutely playing him as running back 2. It's possible that like you just had 2 really good running backs and then you happen to have the number 1 waiver claim, you happen to put in a lot of fab for him, and so maybe you're like, oh, I can't play him at running back 2, play him in the flex. Like, I would find a way to get Chuba into your lineup just because I really do think he's going to command a very large share of the offense. And again, while he's not McCaffrey, he's not going to post like insane numbers. He looked good last week and he'll have enough touches to where it's like you probably want to be finding a way to play him. For the Cowboys, Zeke looked really, really good last week. So I mentioned, was that in like Tuesday's video, that I hadn't seen the game yet, so I didn't want to, make a lot of comments about the running back split. Zeke probably looked as good as he had all season. He didn't look slow. He looked explosive. He looked really good. So that's a positive if you own Ezekiel Elliott. You're obviously playing Ezekiel Elliott in every matchup. But I'll say this, even with him looking that good, the split was still there. They're still going to give Pollard his 10 to 15 opportunities. And so that hurts the upside of Zeke. When he used to be playing and he used to have that ceiling of like 25 carries plus 5 receptions, he could just go nuclear in games. That's not as much there anymore. He needs multiple touchdowns to have like really, really nice games because he's not going to be pushing these massive carry and target numbers while they're mixing in Tony Pollard, because again, they should be mixing in Tony Pollard because he's really, really good and he deserves to be playing. But again, you're playing Zeke. As for Pollard, I know I said a lot of positive things. I still think it's only a flex play. You got to understand they're getting him these touches, but it's only 10 to 15. And so that could still only result in like 10 carries for 50 yards and a reception, and then you're kind of disappointed that you played him. So I would say in deeper formats, definitely find it running back 2. In your standard like 10 or 12 team leagues that are either half or full PPR, maybe someone you're still keeping on the bench as like a high upside option, especially because the Panthers have like a very quality defense. So it's not like the Cowboys are just going to be able to like run all over the Panthers. They have a good defense, and so this isn't like a matchup we're really looking to attack. But if you've got to do it, you've got to put him in there. He's a good player. He's been good this season, so I wouldn't feel horrible about it. Again, I would prefer not to. He's more of a low-rent flex option. Browns at Vikings. This one's up next. This game has another high total, 51.5 points. Should be a close one. The Browns are 2-point road favorites. I don't really have a full lean on who should be favored in this one. I think it's just a really good matchup for the Browns, always starting Chubb. And then Hunt did show us some ceiling last week. 81 yards on 10 carries, 74 yards on 6 receptions. Again, it's against Houston, so like don't expect this level of efficiency to happen every single week. But in a high-scoring game, I think I view Hunt as like a low-end running back 2 option, one that I'd feel pretty good about. So I say Tony Pollard, maybe I don't feel like fantastic because I don't really see like a huge floor there. I'd feel pretty solid about using Hunt at my running back 2 this week. Again, I like this game environment. I'm not terrified of the Vikings defense. He has reception upside. He has touchdown upside. So I feel pretty decent about Hunt this week. For the Vikings, it just depends on the status of Dalvin Cook. But the breakdown is very, very easy for this one. Yes, the Browns have a phenomenal defense, but you're just starting whoever plays. If Dalvin Cook is out there, you're starting Dalvin Cook. If Dalvin Cook is out, you're starting Madison. There's really nothing else to go over there. Maybe there's a chance that there's a report that like Dalvin Cook is going to play, but it's like active. That's just something where we need to try and figure out, right? Like, is he active, but only as a case of like an emergency? Well, then we're playing Madison. But I would imagine we kind of know when Scheffner does his tweets at like midnight on Saturday. So you can kind of gauge it from there. But whoever's starting, play them. Colts at Dolphins. Up next, this game has a low 42.5-point total, and the Dolphins are 1.5-point home favorites, so another very close matchup. For the Colts, always play Jonathan Taylor. Hines is fine as like a running back 2 on RB0 team or in the second flex of a deeper format, but his touchdown chances are pretty low in this one, so I would probably only consider playing him in like full PPR formats, and I would still prefer to play a wide receiver over him, so I'm not in love with Hines. For the Dolphins, Malcolm Brown played way too many snaps last week, but I guess it was good that like Ahmed didn't record a touch, so it wasn't that Brown was playing too many and Ahmed was mixing in. Like, at least it was kind of only down to 2 running backs, and so Gaskin was able to still get 13 carries, 6 targets. That's still a pretty solid workload. He hasn't scored yet, but 5 targets per game is really nice volume through the air. He's still their best running back on the ground. His upside is capped, though, while Brown is going to continue getting red zone work. But I would say that he's fine to use the low-end running back, too. It is a tough matchup, and again, the total is low. So if you have 2 top 20 running backs that you want to use ahead of Gaskin, and you're like, can I bench him this week? Yeah, he's like the running back 25, 26 and half PPR right now. And so it's definitely possible that you've got 2 better running backs and you've got a better wide receiver to use in the flex, in which case I'm definitely okay benching him. You don't have to play running backs who are kind of in a committee in a game with a 42.5-point total. Titans at Jets is up next. This game has a 44.5-point total, and the Titans are 6.5-point road favorites. For the Titans, always start Derrick Henry, especially in games where, A.J. Brown could miss, Julio's banged up. Like, they're going to lean on Derrick Henry here, and it's against the Jets. Like, you're playing Derrick Henry, obviously. For the Jets, they are nearly touchdown underdogs, projected to score less than 19 points, so not a good spot. The Titans do have a bad defense, though. Michael Carter is the only running back I would personally play, but he's still more of just like a low-end running back 3. I would keep him on the bench this week as more of just like an upside piece later in the season. I just want to see the Jets not be awful before playing him, right? Like, the Jets have been so bad 3 games in a row. They finally get a matchup against a defense that's not really, really good. So this is the best spot they've been in, but I want to see it first. I want to see them perform decently, at least in one game before I'm willing to play the running backs. But again, Michael Carter is the one I want to own. Lions at Bears is up next. This game has seen its total drop from 44 points down to 41.5. So tied for the lowest scoring game of the week. Kind of makes sense. And the Bears are actually 2.5-point home favorites, meaning that Vegas kind of values these teams as of equal skill level, and it's really just the fact that the Bears are home as to why they're favored. For the Lions, I am now ready to call DeAndre Swift a weekly must start. His passing game usage is insane. He gets enough volume on the ground. The touchdown upside is there. And there's really no game script where Swift is going to be, out of the game unless it's like a huge blowout. And we've even seen in blowouts, Swift has gotten work. So I'm cool playing him in every single matchup. Again, they fall behind, he gets receptions, they go ahead, he's going to have carries and touchdowns. Like, you're playing DeAndre Swift. For Jamal Williams, more of a lower end flex play. So I'm playing him in the second flex spot in our 16-team league. That can give you some sort of indication. Again, I feel like it's just nice mentioning what I'm doing with Jamal Williams. That's the only team I have him, so I can't tell you what I'm doing in like 12-team leagues. But like some weeks I've said I'm benching him, some weeks I'm playing him. This week I am putting him in the starting lineup. But like if I had him in a 10, I had him in a 12-team league, I would prefer having another option, especially with the reports that Swift could be getting a little bit more work this week. Obviously, that comes at the expense of Williams. For the Bears, I know last week was just brutal to watch, right? But the Lions are a significantly worse defense than the Browns. The Browns are a great defense. That was a tough matchup in Cleveland. Now they're home against the Lions. Those are like polar opposites, right? And David Montgomery, he had just such a massive share of the running back opportunities. So I can't imagine you're benching him this week. Next up, we've got football team at the Falcons. This game has fairly average 48-point total, and it's a pretty close spread. The football team currently favored by 1.5 points on the road, so fairly even, but football team getting the edge there. For the football team, Gibson had that really long receiving touchdown last week. I believe it was like 73 yards. Looked fantastic on that play, looked explosive, but he was fairly unimpressive aside from that play, right? He did basically nothing outside of that one long reception. It's worth noting, though, that they just got destroyed by the Bills, and so the game script was awful. The matchup was really tough. I'm not expecting the Falcons to beat them by 22 points, and so he should have a much better game script. It's unfortunate that he hasn't seen that same workload he saw in week 1. That's disappointing. I wish they would do that, but they're clearly trying to get McKissick more involved. But the Falcons do have a below-average run defense, and they've been a train wreck on offense. So there's absolutely a chance that Washington finds himself up like 4 to 10 points in the fourth quarter, and they're leaning on Gibson to close the game. I do think one thing is that industry projections are very aggressive right now in Gibson. I think I'm going to scale those back. I think industry projections kind of unanimously have him as a low-end 1. I think he's more of a high-end 2. I know that's nitpicking, but I think we're being maybe a little bit too aggressive on him. But regardless, whichever one of those it ends up being, it means you're starting, right? And then you're not playing McKissick. For the Falcons, Mike Davis has been losing snaps every week to Cordero Patterson. It's now a 60-40 split. Patterson he's doing absolutely nothing on the ground. That hasn't been great, but he has 11 receptions over the last 2 weeks. So he's definitely flex viable in deeper full PPR leagues or RB0 builds as a running back 2. Again, I like to go to the example of a 10 or a 12 team league. I still don't love it. If I'm in a 10 or 12 team league and I'm starting Cordero Patterson at 2, it better be full PPR, and I better have went heavy at quarterback, tight end, wide receiver early. Other than that, I think we're maybe putting a little too much stock into these last 2 games. As per TJ Hernandez, Mike Davis is one of just 5 running backs right now with at least 15 touches in each game. But despite that, hasn't scored yet. He hasn't gone over 70 yards in a game. And again, he's losing opportunity. He's losing snaps to Patterson, who's looked really good in the receiving game. And we can't really expect this massive target share for the running backs to continue every single week. So not a super high ceiling on Mike Davis, not a super high floor either. So I don't love either of these 2, but again, it's fine in full PPR. I'm not expecting a very good game, and so it'd be more of a flex, more of a second flex, or a third running back spot, because I don't love them as running back 2s this week. Cardinals at Rams is up next. This game has a very high 55-point total, and the Rams are 4.5-point home favorites. For the Cardinals, the split continues, but even with James Conner scoring twice last week, Edmonds is the more valuable running back. He has just such a large role in the receiving game, and he still has touchdown upside. Even though they're bringing in James Conner, they did give Edmonds an opportunity in close last week. He didn't end up converting, and then they brought James Conner in, but it was still nice to see. And again, 16 receptions on the season compared to 1 target for Conner. It's very clear that Edmonds has the more stable role. He's going to score a touchdown eventually. He didn't have a red zone role last season, and he still scored 5 touchdowns. So he's going to mix in some touchdowns. The receptions are nice. The total yardage is decent. And this is a pretty good game environment. And so I'd be cool playing Edmonds. I wouldn't really love playing James Conner. Again, Chase more low end 2. Conner, I don't know, in a standard league, if any of you play in that, maybe a 12-team standard league, could it be used as running back 2? Maybe, but I would just avoid James Conner. For the Rams, depends on the status of Henderson. This is almost like a discount Viking situation. So remember back we said for the Vikings, whoever is starting Dalvin Cook, Madison, just play them. Kind of a similar spot here for the Rams. Whoever's starting between Henderson and Sony Michel, play them. That would basically mean you're starting Sony Michel if Henderson is out. If Henderson's active, I expect Henderson to get enough of a workload to be start-worthy, and then for Sony Michel to not really get that much of a workload, especially in the receiving game, and so I would be avoiding him. So it really just comes down to Henderson, but it's a really nice spot, really nice game environment. I want players from this game. Seahawks at 49ers up next. This game is a 51.5 point total, so pretty high. And the 49ers are 2.5 point home favorite, so another spot where Vegas kind of views these teams as of equal skill level. For the Seattle, Carson, he saw his snaps crater last week. It was a little bit surprising to watch. And he did lose passing down snaps to Travis Homer, which is obviously concerning because Travis Homer isn't like all that good. I'd keep an eye on this one. I don't know if it's going to continue. Maybe it's just a 1 week thing. I hope it doesn't continue. I hope that he sees, a snap share closer to like 65%. He should be in that range. But if we, look back at this next week, maybe he is in the followers video. I believe next week's a followers video, but I can't remember. But if we're looking at this next week and we see another situation where, Carson is only in for like 50 to 55% of the snaps and he's losing passing down snaps, we're going to have to view him differently moving forward. This is a good game environment. Carson is a very, very good running back. And again, I think there's a chance that he takes those snaps back from Travis Homer. And so I would be still playing him as a running back too. For the 49ers, I'm not touching this backfield. I'd be most interested in Elijah Mitchell if he were active, but I'm not playing Sermon. I'm not playing any other running back. And I would need confirmation. So I'd need to know going into Sunday, Mitchell is active, Mitchell's the starter before I consider it. And I would ultimately rather just watch this week, gain information, and then next week we can kind of use what we saw this week to move forward. I just don't think we know enough for me to trust any of their running backs this week. Next up, Steelers at Packers. This game has a pretty average 45.5 point total. Packers are 6.5 point home favorites. That doesn't feel high enough for me. This Steelers team is not that good. This is in Green Bay. I think this should be over a touchdown. For fantasy, though, pretty easy. Start Aaron Jones, start Najee Harris, move on. Ravens at Broncos is up next. This is actually it's not a super interesting game from like a point standpoint, I feel like it's not likely to shoot out. But I think it's an interesting game to watch because I think the public perception is that the Ravens are clearly the better team, that the Broncos have started off hot because they've had 3 really easy matchups, and that might be true. But the Broncos are 1 point home favorites here, and I just think it's going to be really interesting to find out. Is this Broncos team legit, or was it really just the matchups and they're going to kind of go back to like a 500 team from here on out? So I think it's going to be fun to find that out. Unfortunately, we have this Broncos team losing Hamler for the season, the torn ACL, doesn't have Judy right now, so they're not at full strength. I think they are a better team than everyone thought they were going to be this season. I am happy that I had put the only bet that I made this season on over-unders was over 7 wins for the Broncos. So if they can secure this victory and get to 4-0, I'm feeling good about that one. If they lose it, I'm still feeling good, but I'm going to feel real good if they can win this week. But as for fantasy, going to the away team, which is what we always do, for the Ravens, I don't really want anyone. We saw the floor on Tyson Williams last week. It's incredibly low. We had I don't remember. Off the top of my head, it was like 5 carries for 22 yards. Don't believe he had a reception. I don't trust any of the running backs in any matchup really until they start giving one a larger workload. And this one's in Denver, right? This is a really, really difficult spot for running backs, and they're projected to potentially be losing this game. So I would just avoid their whole backfield. For the Broncos, it's kind of like a 55-45 split from Gordon to Williams. So Gordon getting the 55, with each of them kind of getting equal opportunities in the red zone, in the green zone, all that jazz. So equally likely to score a touchdown in this one. Williams is coming off his worst performance on the ground, and he also lost that brutal goal line fumble at like the 1 yard line. So could he see less work this week? Maybe. They did win the game 26-0, so like the fumble didn't cost them anything. And they're very high on Williams. They love him. So I'm not really thinking it's going to do anything, but worth noting. I view Gordon as slightly more valuable this week just because, he's getting a little bit more volume. He's a little bit more established, and he didn't lose the goal line fumble. But I would say that neither of them is really a slam dunk play. I think both are fine in the flex, maybe as lower end running back twos, but both should finish with a half PPR projection of around like 11 to 12, which is right in flex consideration. But I feel like a lot of the time you're kind of starting someone with like 12 to 13 points in their projection. So it's definitely possible that you have a wide receiver that edges them out. But again, it's like 11 to 12 points in their projection. Kind of flex viable, really just depends what you have. The Sunday night matchup is Bucks at Patriots. This is a very exciting game for like obvious reasons. We've got Tom Brady going to New England. That just makes sense that people kind of want to see that. But also because Brady's going to break the all-time passing yardage record pretty early in this one, so that'll be exciting to watch. The total set at 49 points, so a little bit above average, and the Bucks are touchdown road favorites. Kind of makes sense. They're about 10 points better than the Patriots. Again, like I've kind of alluded to numerous times, home team typically gets about 3 points. So if the road team is 7-point favorites, that means Vegas thinks that like the Bucks are about 10 points better than the Patriots. Overall, I'm not really excited to play any running back in this game. James White is likely done for the season, which means that we're probably going to get a rotation from New England in the worst possible matchup. Like the Bucks are just a horrible matchup, so I wouldn't play any of them. It'll be interesting to see, though, moving forward. Do they activate Stevenson or do they keep Brandon Bolden because they love Bolden on special teams? And so it's definitely possible that they activate Harris, Bolden, and J.J. Taylor, leave Stevenson inactive, and that would give us a good indication of it's not Stevenson time yet for like a little bit, and that's obviously a positive for Harris. But if all of them are active, I think it'll be interesting to see what is the split, because Damian Harris has not been good this season. So are they going to start giving Stevenson a little bit more workload? I hope so. We'll have to see. For the Bucks, Fournette's really the only running back that I would personally play, and I'd really only do it if Bernard is out. If all of Bernard, Ronald Jones, and Fournette are active, this is a game that Brady's just going to want to ball out on. He's probably going to want to find Gronk in the end zone. He's going to want to throw for a bunch of yards, a bunch of touchdowns. And so expecting Fournette to go off, I don't love it. Plus the projections don't love him either. Final game of the week is Monday Night Football, where the Raiders will travel to LA to take on the Chargers. This game has a pretty high 52.5-point total, and the Chargers are 3-point home favorites. For the Raiders, all depends on the status of Josh Jacobs. If he is out, I would probably bench all Raiders running backs. Drake is fine, but for some reason they love Barber, which doesn't make any sense, but it really hurts Drake's ceiling. So I don't know. Like Jacobs is the only running back I would trust, and even him, he's only a running back too. And if we don't know on Sunday, I'm not chancing it. He's not in a good enough spot in this matchup against the Chargers to where, again, a road underdog, that's not the spot you love playing Jacobs, to where I'm taking a chance, right? If I'm not 100% sure he's playing and he's going to be good to go, I'm keeping Jacobs on the bench. I'm not risking taking a 0 for Jacobs. Then for the Chargers, it's easy. Always start Austin Eckler and don't start any other Chargers running back. So that is my breakdown of every matchup this week. Remember, you can see my exact rankings under each scoring format by just looking at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And if you want more content, then I'll be doing more videos on my TikTok, posting some content there that will not be going on YouTube. So make sure you're following me there. There's a link in the description. It's one that says Linktree, or you can just search Nick Zylak into Discover over there. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, and how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? But thanks for watching.